Throughout the ages, the cornucopia symbolized abundance. The motif originated as a curved goat's horn filled to overflowing with fruits and grain, but it could be filled with whatever the owner wished. Cornucopia has held a significant place in various cultures, from its roots in ancient Greek mythology to its prominence in modern-day celebrations. In this episode, we'll explore how similar imagery to the cornucopia, but more so the idea of bounty and bodies, transcends time but partially yields to geography, revealing insight into how societies have revered nature's gifts and expressed their gratitude for the harvest. By uncovering these stories, myths, and artistic representations of the cornucopia, and considering how its symbolism resonates today, we can reflect on how we should use this time to celebrate things we do have. Join in on this journey through history and art that celebrates the essential role of the abundance in our lives. This Thanksgiving, we can dive into the history, cultural significance, and evolution and the symbolism behind one of the holiday's most iconic motifs, the cornucopia, a fitting symbol as we gather to celebrate a season of supposed thankfulness, and more truthfully, overeating to avoid conversations with family members. My name is Renee. You're listening to Detours in Archaeology. This is the cornucopia, a symbol of fertility and abundance. Cornucopia comes from the late Latin cornucopia, which translates literally as plenty. It's a symbol that embodies abundance and nourishment. Although its original Greek name is unknown, we can trace the roots back to ancient Greek or originally Cretan mythology. Traditionally depicted as a curved goat's horn overflowing with fruits and flowers, it represents the bountiful harvest and prosperity from the earth. Greek mythology offers multiple explanations of the origin of the cornucopia. The first would be the goat. In Hesiod's Theogony, after Cronos swallowed all of his children immediately after their births, their mother, the goddess Rhea, deceived her brother consort Cronus by giving him a stone wrapped to look like a baby instead of Zeus. She instead gave the infant Zeus to Adamalthea, a doublet or epithet of the name of Amalthea, to nurse in a cave on Mount Ida in Crete. The Greek tradition relates that, so that Cronus would not hear the wailing of the infant, Amalthea gathered the Cretes around the cave, or the Corybondes, to dance, shout, and clash their spears against their shields. One of the best known incarnations of the story after the birth and moving of the baby Zeus to the cave was when he was cared for and protected by a number of divine attendants, including the goat, Amalthea or Amalthea, meaning tender goddess or nurturing goddess, who fed him with her milk. The suckling future king of the gods had unusual abilities and strength, and in playing with his nursemaid, he accidentally broke off one of her horns, which had the divine power to provide unending nourishment as the foster mother had had to the god. In a similar version, Amalthea was a nymph, not a goat, who nurtured the infant Zeus with goat's milk. Baby Zeus accidentally broke off the horn of the goat, which had then had the divine power to provide unending nourishment, and in general the horn was regarded as a symbol of inexhaustible riches and plenty, and became the attribute of various divinities and of rivers as fertilizers to the land. And according to one version of the story, Amalthea filled the horn with fruits and flowers and presented it to Zeus, who placed it together with the goat, which was revered by Zeus, among the stars as the constellation Capricorn. In some other traditions, like in Hionos's De Astronomica, Amalthea's skin, when she was a goat, or that of her goat, was taken by Zeus in honor of her when she died. This became the protective aegis in the Iliad, a device carried by Athena and Zeus. It's been variously interpreted as an animal skin or a shield, and sometimes featuring the head of the Gorgon, again in Aegis de Astronomica, and also by Homer in the Iliad. The name Amalthea itself appears to be an epithet, signifying the presence of an earlier nurturing goddess or maiden goddess who the Greeks knew to be located in Crete, where the Minoans may have called her some version of Dicte. Ancient authors propose several possible derivations of the name Amalthea. Hesychius writes that it comes from the verb amalthein, meaning to nourish, to enrich, while others derive it from amalthectos, meaning hard or firm. Still, others proposed origin from amalthea, meaning divine goat, which would make sense, though the most common derivation is from amelin, which I'm told means to milk or suck, but it means unblemished. In a completely separate myth, the Cornucopia's connection to the myth of Achelos and Heracles, or the Roman Hercules, and the horn after their battle. Achelos, a river god who in some versions could change form, transformed into a bull to fight Heracles for Deianiria's hand. Heracles wrestled Achelos to the ground and tore off one of his horns. In others, such as Ovid's Metamorphosis, river gods themselves could be depicted as horned, which could be what Heracles ripped off. In Achelos and Heracles mural painting by the American artist Thomas Hart Benton, which you can see on the article that I post with this, or if you want to see in person, at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. But there was an expansion. The cornucopia became the attribute of several Greek and Roman deities, particularly those associated with the harvest, prosperity, or spiritual abundance. These gods included Demeter, Dionysos, Abundantia, Tyche, Cedes, as well as personifications of Earth, Gaia or Terra. Cedes, or Hades, the Roman Plutus, was the god of riches and the underworld, was a brother of Zeus, and the son of the grain goddess Demeter in some mythologies, while also being her son-in-law since he married her daughter Persephone. Hades, the classical ruler of the underworld in the mystery religions, was a giver of agriculture, mineral and spiritual wealth, and in art often holds the cornucopia. The nymph Maia, who is the oldest daughter of Atlas and the oceanic nymph Leone, who is the mother of the Pleiades, was the goddess who provided fruit, vegetation, and flowers. Tyche, later known by the Romans as Fortuna, the goddess of luck, had the power to grant prosperity. In further Roman use, this mythical association linked the cornucopia to the gods and the divine blessings of nature and fertility. The Roman version of the cornucopia was depicted as a curved spiral horn, typically made out of animal horn decorated with fruits and flowers, reinforcing its connection to the bounties of nature and agriculture. As with the Greeks, the Romans also adopted this symbol and connected it to Fortuna, their version of Tyche, and Ceres, which is the Roman version of Demeter, or Demeter, the goddess of agriculture. The cornucopia was depicted in a variety of ways in Roman art, including on coins, sculptures, and frescoes, where it was shown as a horn overflowing with fruits, grains, and sometimes even precious objects. In these depictions, the cornucopia symbolized not just abundance, but also prosperity and the favor of the gods. In the Roman imperial cult, abstract Roman deities who fostered peace, Pax Romana, and prosperity were also depicted with a cornucopia, including Abundantia, abundance personified, and Annona, goddess of the grain supply to the city of Rome. The personification of the peace, the goddess Pax, was also shown with the cornucopia to further emphasize the opulence and wealth during this Roman golden era. Fruits and grains were obviously included in the Pax image to symbolize the return and growth of farming. especially as many veterans settled on farms after the Civil Wars. Pax was also depicted with twins, reflecting the domestic piece of the Pax Romana, which was enhanced when fathers were home instead of out fighting. The imagery of cows, pigs, and sheep on the Aura Passes represented the abundance of food and farming during this period, with the animals often sacrificed to Pax. In later years of her worship, Pax was rarely shown with the caduceus and began to share more features with Augustus, resembling a connection to Pax Augusta, trying to get more backers behind his cause, and trying to prove his right to rule through divinity. The cornucopia often looks like a triangle, which is another ancient symbol and was widely used to represent female fertility and the pubic area in various civilizations, including Mesopotamia, Phoenicia, and Egypt. Both the cornucopia and the triangle serve as powerful visual symbols of ancient art, communicating the ideas of abundance, fertility, and fundamental cultural values that may not be easily expressed through other means. Ancient fertility symbols have played a significant role in various cultures throughout history. These symbols, often inspired by nature, reflect human reproductive concerns and their connection to the natural world. The concept of fertility extends beyond human reproduction to include animals and plants, manifesting in iconic and symbolic forms such as statues, reliefs, and textual expressions. The cornucopia's imagery has been used in art and sculpture for millennia, as evidenced by a Roman marble cornucopia found in Navarra, Spain. The cornucopia holds various foods, a bunch of grapes in the foreground, several nuts, apples, and at the top, a pine cone. The fragment is damaged on its left side, where it should have joined the figure in which the cornucopia was apportioned, and was only lightly worked on the back, although it was enough to suggest that the cornucopia should have been connected to a round sculpture. Artists like Rubens creatively adapted the cornucopia, which also appeared on some Yanware pottery, with its decorative styles evolving from the pre-Flavian to the late Adrianus and Tonini periods. While traditionally associated with agricultural abundance, the cornucopia's versatility allowed it to represent various concepts of prosperity and fecundity across different cultures and time periods. In the Western art by Rubens, while prominently featured, is not technically a cornucopia but baskets, filling it with unexpected items such as children or regal insignia, also to symbolize fertility. Rubens' painting of the future king Erythonios, the monstrous offspring of Vulcan and Gaia, takes place in the garden of Diana of Ephesus. The painting The Discovery of Erythonios, from circa 1616, and the earlier version, which is from 1615, is thought to be one of Rubens' strangest mythological scenes. Like the painting that had a Medusa, it depicts Mother Nature in a polarized form, as a female sculptural body and the generative liquid that erupts from it, mostly from her either 5 or 6 breasts. According to Ovid, Vulcan tried and failed to rape Minerva, his seed spilt onto the earth and accidentally mating with the mythological earth goddess Gaia. Their offspring, Erythonios, was a human infant with serpentine lower limbs. After his birth, Minerva shut him in a box, which she gave to the 3 daughters of the Attic king Cerceros, warning them never to look inside. Rubens depicts the moment when one of the girls, Agravos, disobeys and reveals the monster to her sisters. This scene is set in an ornate Flemish garden filled with antiquarian objects, the largest and most prominent of which, on the right-hand side of the painting, is the mossy stone fountain of the statue of Diana of Ephesus, an ancient herb that in the Renaissance had become an emblem of nature's fertility. The 16th century emblems identified Diana of Ephesus simply as Natura, an association extending to Gaia. On the left-hand side of the painting, there's also another Herm that is a man with a shroud, but I'm not sure who that is particularly supposed to be unless it is Hermes or Pan, and it is only in the 1616 version. The other differences between it is that there are more people in the 1616 version, and the baby itself has less of a serpentine lower body than in the 1615 version. Another idea that Paul Rubens had was the head of Medusa. While it's not a cornucopia as such, it's supposed to represent one, as the head of Medusa has been severed. The head itself is supposed to be the cornucopia, with the snakes and insects pouring out of it, giving them life. But the cornucopia has undergone significant transformations in both its symbolic meaning and physical and visual representation across different historical periods and cultures. Its evolution from a classical symbol of divine abundance to a contemporary emblem of commercial excess reflects broader shifts in society values, economics, and artistic styles. In connected areas, the symbols and their meanings blend together. Moving over to Hinduism and Buddhism, the iconography of Fertility shows similarities to the Greek goddess Tihi and may have been transmitted to East Asia through the influence of Greco-Buddhism. In Greek art, Tihi was depicted in the presence of children carrying a cornucopia, an emblematic gubernaculum, a ship's steering wheel or rudder for steering, and the Wheel of Fortune. She may stand on the wheel, presiding over the entire circle of fate. Another goddess, Goddess Lakshmi, is also tied to Fortuna, as the name Lakshmi also occurs in common usage as a word meaning auspicious or fortunate woman. She is crowned with a tripartite diadem, enthroned on a lion's seat, and is venerated as a bringer of good fortune and well-being to the earth, of which she was an early personification. Two elephants that lustrate with her water from pots held in their trunks can be equated to the rain clouds of the monsoon and successful crops. This aspect is further emphasized by her cornucopia in the form of a flowering lotus, symbolizing abundance. Lakshmi, also as a goddess of wealth, with lotus flowers or coins spilling from her hands, represents both spiritual and material abundance. The Indian concept of abundance is often tied to karma and the spiritual reward of giving, and Lakshmi's symbol of wealth and prosperity shares thematic connections with the cornucopia's representative role. Notably, in Buddhist traditions, the cornucopia might be conceptually linked with spiritual nourishment, where the abundance spilling from a container represents the endless virtues and blessings of life. In Assyrian art, ornamental bands surrounding central scenes represented the promise of plenty resulting from the king's divine relationship. Mesopotamian imagery, particularly in Babylonia and Assyria, often avoided anthropomorphic representations of deities outside of temples, instead using symbols, animals, hybrids, or specifically geometric motifs, including curved lines in the case of Sumerian ornamentation. Mesopotamian art evolved from Sumerian times through the late Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian periods, encompassing various regions and cultures. Ancient Mesopotamia, Sumer, Babylon, Assyria, had imagery similar to the cornucopia as vessels and horns overflowing with food to represent agricultural fertility. These cornucopia-like motifs as crescent-shaped symbols were closely associated with the deities like Inanna, later known as Ishtar, or Dumuzi, later known as Tammuz, goddess and gods of fertility and the harvest, and appeared on ancient seals and sculptural reliefs. Though not identical to the classic European cornucopia, these representations still convey similar meanings related to abundance and fertility. Crescent shapes in Babylonian art and mythology symbolize abundance and fertility, often associated with the powerful goddesses. Visual representations of the agricultural surplus reinforce themes of abundance from the Uruk to the Neo-Sumerian periods. In the royal cemetery of Ur, Queen Puabi's tomb contained jewelry depicting fruits and date inflorescences linked to the goddess Inanna or Ishtar. The work of vase illustrates the agricultural food chain, culminating with Inanna and the king's sacred marriage ritual ensuring prosperity. Crescent crowns on alabaster figurines of Ishtar Aphrodite from Hellenistic Babylonia connected their elite owners to temples and astrological knowledge. These figurines allowed women to construct sexual agency and facilitate their journey to the afterlife. Babylonian artists primarily worked on a small scale, creating portable objects like vases, plaques, and cylinder seals to express their artistic ideas, as large-scale mural relief work was impossible due to lack of suitable stone. Ancient Egyptian art and mythology intertwined with agriculture, religion, and daily life. The Cornucopia symbol appears in tomb paintings, possibly representing harvest offerings to deities like Renenudet, a cobra-headed goddess of grain, grapes, nourishment, and the harvest. Egyptian art rarely depicted narrative scenes, instead focusing on standardized activities and rituals. Because of this, agricultural scenes were common, showcasing the importance of farming in Egyptian culture. Fecundity figures, personifications of non-sexual fertility, played a significant role in Egyptian iconography. These figures often appeared in offering processions and scenes of uniting the two lands, symbolizing agricultural prosperity. The gazelle, a common motif in Egyptian art, was associated with the desert and themes of death and rebirth, often appearing in hunting scenes as a symbol of feminine divinity. Hieroglyphic representations of plants, vessels, and food further reinforced themes of abundance in Egyptian visual culture, as we can see in tombs, where you want to make sure people have plenty of food in the afterlife. Ancient Egyptian art frequently linked the representations of abundance to the goddess Hathor, who was depicted as a cow-headed goddess protecting the pharaoh, and as a sky goddess with cow horns. Milk offerings were made to deities, and the dead pharaoh was portrayed as receiving new life from Hathor's milk. In temple scenes, meat offerings were presented to Hathor and other deities, symbolizing elimination of enemies and the progress of the gods. Abundance was a central theme in Near Eastern art, reinforced through visual representations of agricultural surplus. Stela from the later periods continued to depict individuals offering Sistra and Menats to Hathor, emphasizing her role as a goddess of abundance. Moving quite a bit sideways, in ancient and Viking-era Scandinavia, the cornucopia as a literal symbol does not appear. However, several themes related to abundance and fertility are central to the mythology and cultural world of Norse and Scandinavian peoples. In Norse mythology, there is a plethora of symbols for abundance, including the goddess Freya, of fertility, love, and prosperity, especially in terms of agricultural fertility and the bounty of earth. She is also connected to the Brisingamen, a magical necklace that symbolizes abundance, wealth, and prosperity, and is sometimes considered a form of divine bounty. There is Yggdrasil, the world tree, the Norse harvest and feast festivals to celebrate the abundance of land, though no cornucopia were present per se. These blots, sacrificial feasts, were dedicated to the gods of the harvest, like Freyr, the god of fertility and agriculture, symbolizing the abundance through ritual and offerings. But there was a horn of mead, sometimes depicted in Norse imagery, which could be considered a metaphorical equivalent of the cornucopia in some ways, as mead, a fermented beverage made of honey, was associated with wealth, celebration, and fertility in Norse society, and therefore the drinking horn was a symbol of both generosity and abundance. The horn of mead holds significant symbolism in Norse mythology, closely associated with Odin's quest for the sacred mead. This quest is depicted in two contrasting myths, but representing both passive and active aspects of Odin's journey to the otherworld. Drinking horns played a crucial role in Viking Age culture, as evidenced by archaeological finds and literary sources. These horns were not only practical vessels, but also carried the mythological significance often connected to gods like Thor, who would drink a lot, and the cosmic struggle between gods and giants. The golden horns of Jutland, dating to the 5th century CE, provide insight into early Norse iconography and runic inscriptions. These horns feature complex engravings and disguised runic inscriptions, suggesting a sophisticated use of runes for both linguistic and numerical purposes, possibly indicating magical or religious significance. Viking drinking horns, often elaborately decorated with intricate carvings, were also used in rituals and feasts, symbolizing the prosperity provided by the earth, particularly the mead, which was the drink of abundance and divine favor. These drinking horns sometimes featured motifs related to fertility and nature, such as animals, plants, or the Yggdrasil tree. They highlight the connection between earthly sustenance and the divine. As an example, the mammon drinking horns found in Denmark feature engravings of animals and symbols that might connect nature's abundance to the Viking gods. The Celtic peoples, including those who practiced Druidism, did not use the Cornucopia symbol directly, but they had a profound connection to divinity, nature, fertility, and Earth's abundance. Several symbols of abundance, such as cauldrons, vessels, and nature-based motifs, appear in Celtic art and mythology and may echo the themes represented by the Cornucopia. One of the most iconic symbols of abundance in Celtic mythology, the cauldron of Dagda, the cauldron of plenty, or the cauldron of inspiration, which appears in various stories, particularly in Irish and Welsh mythology. The cauldron of Dagda, Dagda being a prominent Celtic deity, was said to provide an endless supply of food and drink, akin to the symbolism of a cornucopia, but in the form of a cauldron rather than a horn. In these tales, the cauldron is often described as providing infinite abundance to those who were deserving or in need, particularly in the context of hospitality or rituals of feasting and celebration. It's also a powerful feminine symbol in Celtic and Druidic traditions, representing regeneration, enlightenment, and the Great Mother's womb. This mystical vessel is associated with rebirth and is prevalent in various legends and tales, often worshipped in holy wells and hot springs. The concept of the cauldron is sometimes thought to have evolved into the Christian Grail, exemplifying the common medieval practice of Christianizing pagan symbols and customs. While not a physical artifact, in Celtic artwork, this cauldron would be depicted in symbolic representations of feasts and rituals of abundance. The cauldron is often shown as a vessel of prosperity that provides not only food but also spiritual nourishment. In Celtic metalwork, such as with brooches or goblets, motifs inspired by the cauldron of Dagda might be found, where animal and plant imagery emphasize life's cyclical nature and the gifts of the land. Another example of Celtic art is the real Gunstrup cauldron, a large silver vessel dating to the 1st century BCE found in Denmark in 1891. It features elaborate depictions of rituals, nature gods, and sacred animals. The cauldron is argued to symbolize the connection between nature, the harvest, and the divine, with figures related to agriculture, the fertility of earth, and the abundance of nature, as it was believed to contain the power to feed and nourish through its sacred and divine associations. Its elaborate reliefs, created by multiple skilled artisans, depict human busts, deities, and various motifs. One plate features a goddess with cuckoos, symbolizing spring and fertility. The cauldron's iconography also includes sacrificial scenes like a deer god and a wheel god, representing its ceremonial significance. While its exact origin remains debated, scholars tend to agree on its continental Celtic context, focusing on the vessel's unique blend of Celtic and Oriental imagery. Its craftsmanship, particularly the bowl on the bottom plate, demonstrates skill that causes the cauldron to continue to be a subject of extensive study, offering insights to the late Iron Age religious beliefs and artistic traditions. While not as common as the cauldron, some early Irish texts do refer to horns filled with abundance. For example, the horn of Dagda was supposedly a magical object that could provide sustenance when needed. While it's also not exactly described as a cornucopia, its symbolic link to plenty and divine favor is a comparable theme, especially when it has a horn-like shape. In the art through time, we can move forward to medieval use. During the medieval period, the cornucopia lost some of its earlier connection to pagan mythology and became more associated with Christian symbolism, representing divine providence and the gifts of God. While it was still used in religious contexts, it was often a symbol of bounty bestowed on believers by a gracious God. The medieval cornucopia was less frequently seen in visual art, but it did appear in some illuminated manuscripts where it symbolized the abundance of God's grace. The Renaissance marked a revival of interest in classical mythology, and the cornucopia re-emerged as a prominent symbol of prosperity and wealth, especially in art and literature. It was now used in allegorical depictions of abundance and was frequently associated with the god Bacchus, the god of wine, or Ceres, the god of harvests. While it was still used in other religious contexts, particularly in Christian iconography as a symbol of divine grace and fertility, it was also a symbol of both material wealth and spiritual grace, often seen in still life paintings and as allegories of prosperity. The Baroque period also saw the cornucopia flourish as an artistic motif, especially in the still life paintings, where it was often used to signify luxury, opulence, and still bountiful harvests. Artists like Caravaggio and Rubens, who we discussed earlier, used the cornucopia to highlight the pleasures of the material world. The cornucopia became a central object in paintings that depicted feasts, celebrations, and the wealth of the earth. In Baroque sculpture, the cornucopia often appeared as part of elaborate allegorical works, symbolizing the blessings of fortune, wealth, and victory. During these periods, the horns often became more ornate, curved in exaggerated spirals, or made to appear more decorative and more stylized. The cornucopia now included not just fruits and flowers, but also luxury items, such as jewels, coins, wines, and rich fabrics, emphasizing both divine and earthly wealth, possibly implying that they may be connected. Moving forward to the 18th century, or 1700s, as European societies entered the Enlightenment, they became more focused on reason, commerce, and material wealth. The cornucopia became a symbol of economic prosperity and national wealth. It appeared frequently in political iconography, symbolizing the abundance of resources and the benefits of commercial society. During the Victorian era, from the mid to late 1800s, the cornucopia became a common image in the context of harvest festivals and Thanksgiving celebrations, especially in the United States. It symbolized the abundance of the harvest and the gratitude for nature's bounty. The growing commercial markets also began using the cornucopia in advertisements to symbolize customer abundance, especially in relation to food products and to invoke the joy of pleasant, plentiful living. The visual characteristics of the cornucopia became more stylized and less literal in the 18th and 19th centuries. It was often rendered in vibrant colors in advertisements and prints, and commonly depicted with fruits, vegetables, grain, and flowers, but with a growing emphasis on luxury items as industrial production and trade expanded. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the cornucopia became highly commercialized, and its art was a victim of mass consumerism. In the 20th century, the cornucopia began to lose its original associations with divine favor and agricultural fertility and became more closely linked to commercialism and consumer culture. It became a symbol of excess and overconsumption in a rapidly industrializing world. During Thanksgiving celebrations in the US, the cornucopia became widely recognized as a symbol of the harvest season, but it was increasingly used in a commercial context. More advertisements promoting food products or grocery store displays to encourage consumption. In modern art and pop culture, the cornucopia has often been reinterpreted as a symbol of commercialism and consumer excess. In modern art, artists like Andy Warhol and Jeff Koons have used the imagery of abundance to comment on the growing commodification of culture and the surplus of material goods in modern society. These don't always have the cornucopia itself attached. Thanksgiving advertising has continued to incorporate the cornucopia as a central image in promoting ideas of family gatherings, celebration, and the bounty of the earth, though increasingly commercialized as part of the larger consumer culture. The cornucopia's shape has continued to become less organic and more symbolic, often abstracted into modern art or stylized in advertisements to reflect man-made abundance rather than natural or divine bounty. The cornucopia may still feature traditional fruits and vegetables, but it often also holds consumer goods such as toys, gadgets, and luxury items, very similar to what it was doing in the Baroque period, symbolizing both material excess and the mass production of goods. Continuing to today, what is the cornucopia's modern symbolism and usage? What is cornucopia slang for? Cornucopia means a lot of good stuff. Once celebrated for its mythological roots as a representation of abundance, is now frequently co-opted in advertising and consumer packaging to invoke feelings of surplus and generosity. As supermarkets deck their aisles with cornucopia motifs, they draw on its imagery to suggest not just an abundance of food, but also the joys of the holiday and the act of giving. For instance, major brands like Coca-Cola have harnessed the visual power of the cornucopia in their holiday campaigns. This commercialization ultimately shifts the cornucopia's meaning from the traditional symbol to one that underscores consumerism and the pursuit of abundance, reflecting society's deeper relationship with consumption, especially during this time of year. It also serves as a powerful symbol in political propaganda and economic discourse, especially within the narrative of American abundance. This iconic imagery resonates with the rhetorical-sounding national prosperity and has carved out a significant place in the iconography of capitalism, embodying both aspiration and excess. Within political imagery, the cornucopia symbolizes a flourishing economy. It represents the bountiful potential of the American resources and the promises of growth during times of economic boom and government campaigns promoting abundance. The cornucopia also featured in political cartoons, especially during times of economic growth or economic crisis, symbolizing both national prosperity and the dangers of overabundance. As such, the cornucopia not only reflects national wealth, but also acts as a reminder of the duality inherent in abundance, a celebration of communal success that can sometimes veer into excess. The materials and forms through which the cornucopia is expressed are diverse. While ancient Greek and Roman depictions are characterized by detailed horn-shaped designs crafted from natural materials like animal horns or terracotta or marble or woven baskets, modern-day interpretations may take on a stylized form using a variety of media, from illustrations and advertisements to decorations made of plastic or ceramic. Of course, we still do weave the basket. There are ones that are woven from reeds or plant-based material, or ones made out of bread. This evolution in form captures the essence of the cornucopia symbolism, yet showcases the flexibility of cultural expression as it resonates with changing societal values and aesthetics over time. Whether depicted in mythological narratives or utilized in present-day celebrations, universal symbolism of abundance transcends individual cultures, ideally reflecting shared human. The cornucopia transcends its role as a mere artistic motif to become a powerful. Today, the cornucopia is often seen in modern art to question ideas about excess and consumption. Artists use the symbol to reflect on historical events, especially in post-consumer societies where many people experience shortages despite the abundance of products. The ideal image of plenty with the reality of economic inequality, artists encourage the important discussions about wealth myths and the environmental effects of overconsumption. The idea of the cornucopia invokes nostalgia, as artists connected to memories of a simpler, seemingly more abundant times. Artwork featuring cornucopias can stir feelings of longing for a less complicated past regarding economics and society. This nostalgia is both comforting and critical. It celebrates past ideas while questioning today's focus on consumption over the meaningful relationships and sustainable practices. Contemporary artists utilize the cornucopia motif to challenge contemporary views on wealth and its distribution. Through installation art, sculptures, and mixed media, the cornucopia is often presented in a decayed or disrupted state, symbolizing the fragility of wealth and the unsustainable nature of consumer culture. This approach encourages viewers to reconsider what abundance means in a world full of inequality and climate change, effectively promoting a critical examination of societal values related to prosperity and success. Even a sense of irony plays a significant role in the portrayal of the cornucopia in contemporary art. Artists might exaggerate the abundance depicted in a cornucopia to highlight the absurdities of consumer culture or to illustrate the disconnect between wealth and happiness. Such ironic representations serve not only to entertain, but also to create a dialogue about the superficiality of consumer-driven lifestyles and the imperative of finding deeper satisfaction beyond material possessions. The cornucopia transcends its role as a mere artistic motif to become a powerful vehicle for cultural critique. This symbol, rooted in abundance and prosperity, adapts to various contexts, reflecting societal values and challenges. In classical antiquity, it celebrated agricultural bounty and divine favor. Yet, in contemporary interpretations, it can comment on issues such as consumerism and both environmental and economic sustainability by the overflowing of not only fruits and grains, but also discarded waste and luxury items. The cornucopia invites viewers to ponder the dichotomy of plenty versus wastefulness, reminding us that abundance can be both a blessing and a burden in today's world. Through its versatility, the cornucopia serves as a mirror, reflecting the complexities of the human experience and ever-evolving narrative of cultural identity. The cornucopia began as a simple, natural horn and gradually became more ornate and decorative. In later periods, it evolved into a more symbolic and stylized form, especially in advertisements and modern art, where it might not even be a literal horn, but simply a representation of superficial excess. Finally, its presence in commercial imagery underscores both a celebration of abundance and the critique of overconsumption, reflecting today's ambivalence toward wealth and material goods. But as we look at its enduring significance in contemporary visual culture, the cornucopia remains a versatile symbol found in fine art, graphic design, and advertising. Artists often invoke it to make discussions about societal values, encouraging deeper reflection on what true abundance means in a world often characterized by inequality. In this sense, the cornucopia's adaptability not only as an artistic motif, but also as a vehicle for critical cultural critique. In summary, the cornucopia's journey through time illuminates its enduring significance across different cultures and areas. Its ability to morph from a sacred emblem of the divine to a complex commentary on modern consumerism, the dichotomy of plenty versus wastefulness, celebration and critique, aspiration and excess, reminding us that abundance can be both a blessing and a burden in today's world. Through its versatility, the cornucopia serves as a mirror, reflecting the complexities of the human experience and the ever-evolving narrative to cultural identity, reminding us that the quest for abundance is a timeless narrative, continuously rewritten within the contours of our ever-evolving societies. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the art and symbolism of abundance through the cornucopia. From the animal horns held by the goddesses to the horns held by the goddesses in India, and all the way to Viking mead horns, Celtic cauldrons. We've seen how these diverse, but even distantly connected cultures used art to connect with the bounty of nature. Though they didn't all use a literal cornucopia, the shared themes of fertility, growth, and the generosity of nature are unmistakable. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to Detours in Archaeology for more deep dives into the fascinating world of cultural symbolism and how ancient myths and art still influence our lives today. Until next time, and especially during this time of the year, remember, abundance is not just about what we can take from nature, but what we can give back. I hope that you can all go to my website and follow along with the full article, which has more information and a cornucopia of images and further reading and citations. If you have any corrections, extra information, or any questions, hit me up at the contact button on my website, which is detoursandarchaeology.com, or send me a direct email at detoursarchaeology@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. All the music comes from Scott Buckley at scottbuckley.com.au. You can also support me on Patreon. It is free. Please like and subscribe. If you liked my podcast, please rate and review. I'd really appreciate it, and it would help get the word out. For the fun fact this week, since we are so close to Thanksgiving, I'm going to talk more about food. I've always kind of wondered why eggplant is called eggplant. One thing I just learned was that it is a fruit, which I guess makes sense because there are seeds inside. But it has to do with a specific popular variety in the 18th century known for its egg-like color and circular shape. Eggplants were domesticated in the Indo-Burma region as early as 300 BCE and were called batingnan, a Sanskrit word derived from vani meaning wind. During the British occupation of India, English horticulturist John Abercrombie took note of a particularly common local cultivar that looked white and spherical, much like a bird egg. In 1767, he wrote about this eggplant in the book Every Man is His Own Gardener, denoting the first use of the term in English literature. While these circular eggplants have since fallen out of fashion, similar varieties, including the Easter eggplant, are still grown. But in general, the most widely known type of eggplant is known for its dark purple color and elongated shape, but that wasn't until the early 19th century that the shift to this variety took place in the United States. These facts today were from interestingfacts.com. If you have any random facts you want to share, please do, and I will share them with everyone else, and you'll get a shout out. Thanks again, and happy Indigenous Peoples Month.